Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. This is going to be a big one. Today we are covering everything in Infinite Forbidden that I think matters in any way if you are somewhat of a competitive player, even if you're more of like a rogue style player. I'm talking about everything that I think is relevant in this set whatsoever to competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! There's a lot of stuff. This is overall a pretty banger set in terms of how much it actually affects the game, and so there's a lot to get to. You guys know I like to section these off in different categories, but without further ado, with so much stuff here, let's just jump into this thing. First category here, of course, is new archetypes. There's 4, I think, new archetypes, which is pretty large. I don't think I've ever seen a set with more than 4 archetypes in it that are all brand new. But the first one here is Millennium. This is basically what Exodia is now. As a pure variant, this is the strategy. It is not an FTK strategy really anymore. It's actually more about just like actually setting up board presence and going first and making a hard board to beat. They have some decent cards for what it's worth. They have some really solid engine cards and a couple of their main deck monsters like Sengenjin, the Golem, or the Millennium Shield. Those cards are all pretty solid engine cards monster-wise. The deck is really built around this spell card, though. This is kind of the branded fusion here. This card just says, like, put your pretty awesome boss monster on the field for free. So that's pretty nice. The only drawback is, yes, you still have to play the Exodia pieces, at least one of each, because you have to reveal all 5 of them for this card to resolve. But you do get a pretty powerful boss monster in the Unstoppable Exodia Incarnate. This card basically is a walking spell and trap negate, but he also, once per turn, just gets to set an exile or an obliterate spell or trap card straight from the deck, and those are actually pretty decent interactions as well. So just making this guy, he's going to be big, he's going to be annoying to out. He actually has, he can't be destroyed by card effects either, so that's a little bit of bonus. And then obviously, like 2 interruptions is pretty decent for what just resolving this one spell card gets you. You have to play the bricks, but it is what it is. Also, which a small thing probably worth mentioning, you can play this engine splashable in other decks as well, with just the like Sengenjin, the Golem, the Millennium Shield, and then the field spell the deck has. It is just an engine that puts a handful of big bodies on the field that are also decent levels as well. Like you get an 8, a 6, and a 5, I think, with a little bit of follow-up. That might be worth messing around with certain synchro strategies that have like an excess of tuners but not enough non-tuners. This is a decent engine at just giving you a handful of non-tuners with decent levels, so definitely feel free to mess around with that. The next archetype we have is White Forest. Cool archetype. This is the next archetype in the Diabellstar lore. Very exciting. They have potential. They really, really do. Now, you know, we're going into Fiend Smith format, so I don't know how much overall they're going to be able to do, but they are really cool. They're a synchro-based strategy where all of the monsters in the deck basically plus you by sending a spell or trap from your hand or field to the graveyard. So in Archetype, all their own spell and traps like come back immediately when they're sent to activate an effect. So you'd want to pair this deck with cards like that. That's why the Toy Box engine seems to make sense with this engine and stuff like that. So not only that, you got some pretty powerful synchro monsters as well. I think they have 3 different ones, but they're all pretty solid for what it's worth. And the other thing to mention too, also a little bit splashable here. Not quite as universally splashable, but the deck has ways to either summon from deck or add just like light spellcaster monsters. So this is why Centurion has already been a deck that's been linked to White Forest. We'll see if that comes to fruition. I couldn't even really recommend an exact ratio of like how to pick up the core because every time I've seen an OCG list messing around with White Forest Centurion, it's like different ratios of White Forest cards like every time. So I would say mess around with it on your own, really try to figure out your own ratios, but there definitely is some cool potential there for sure. Next archetype, and second to last new archetype, Mimighouls. This is the new TCG exclusive. Very, very fun out the gate. I really like the art style. A lot of people like the goofier art style here to start. And there is some cool stuff going on here. They're all about setting their monsters to your opponent's side of the field face down, and then forcing your opponent to flip them up, in which case those monsters have some pretty negative effects for your opponent when they are flipped up that way. So that's the whole goal. There's also some pretty cheeky stuff. The fact that you can like set them and flip them turn 1 to potentially make stuff like Thrust and Talents live even going first. So there's some cheekiness there, a little like Ken and Gen-ish cheekiness. as well as like certain floodgates. You could play Tikaboo. Not even Tikaboo's not even as good, but stuff like Gozen. The whole archetype is Earth, so you give your opponent a monster, flip it up, set your Gozen, and like now your opponent basically can't summon anything but Earths. There's definitely some cheeky stuff you can do there as well. For what it's worth, I don't think they're that good right now, but I do think they have like a good amount of engine cards. They've got like a Stratos, they have like 2 separate Stratos monsters, they have a searching field spell, they have a trap that summons from deck, they have another spell that like summons one to your opponent's field and adds one to your hand. There's actually quite a good amount of engine starters here that I like. I just don't think what they do is quite powerful enough yet. So I think it's a cool start. I think it's fun. I am excited to see what the next wave is. I hope they do well, but I say that every time with TCG exclusives, so we're just going to have to sit back and see. But cool, fun start so far. And then we get to the final new archetype, Fiend Smith. I got to move my fat head here in the corner just a little bit. Okay, so looking at Fiend Smith, this engine is very scary. This engine is about to run the format. This is what I would recommend you pick up if you're just looking for like kind of a simple, basic setup for the Fiend Smith stuff. There's actually a lot here. As far as stuff not from this set, you need to have a Fabled Blurry. This is just part of the engine because when this card's discarded, it summons itself back. So by searching it off Tractus and discarding it immediately, it does just extend you a Light Fiend on the field to make the link 1 with. But you do need Fabled Blurry, and depending on the deck you're playing, you're going to have to make a decision on like which one of the rank 6s you like. Some decks will be able to play both, so maybe you just get both. So maybe you just already have these because Beatrice and Caesar have already come up in past formats. But just interesting to note, like you should keep these on hand. And then everything else is what you probably should be picking up from this set. Luckily, everything is one of except for Engraver. Now, Engraver is also a secret rare, and he's going to be the chase card of the set, so sorry, that's going to be expensive. But everything else is one of. This is Tractus, this is Sanctus, I think. Some people won't play Sanctus, but it's like a common, I'm pretty sure, in the set, or a super, so it'll be cheap, and there are, like, sometimes you play this, because playing this card can allow the engine to play a little bit better around Droll, which can come up. And then because the engine shuffles back Light Fiends into the extra deck, you don't need to play multiples really of any of them. So 1 Requiem, 1 Sequentia, 1 Lacrimosa, 1 Dies Irae, and then one of these guys as well. These are 2 new TCG exclusives that I cannot fathom why Konami decided to make these right next to the Fiend Smith engine, because that engine was already going to tear up the game. But then they also made 2 new TCG exclusives that also make the decks even better. Aerial Leader, you won't play Aerial Leader unless you're already playing like it in Ubel or Unchained, or you know what I mean, some Fiend based deck already, but it does just give you a Foolish Burial for a Fiend monster, like basically for free, which is really strong. And Necroquip Princess, this one has a more specific synergy with stuff like Snake Eye, but is still a pretty powerful card regardless for this engine, because it basically can like summon itself by sending like any Fiend that's currently equipped with something. It's pretty free real estate, and it's a level 6 body, which helps you, again, get into your rank 6s, which is kind of what the engine wants to funnel to. Very, very powerful engine. This format is about to be run by this engine. We're about to see this engine topping everywhere. If you want to play high-level competitive Yu-Gi-Oh!, you may need to grab this, at least for the next couple months. But yeah, it is what it is. There you go. All right, next up, next category. This is a more fun category for me. This is for high-level rogue strategies. So there's a handful of strategies that get support in this set that I believe either now or already were some of them. They end up being high-level rogue, whether they're like high rogue, arguably tier 2 in that range. This is cool stuff. These are decks that I think are definitely playable with some of their new cards. So the first one is Memento. This is a fun one because Memento's kind of been slowly climbing up the tiers of competitive play. They got support in the last set, but this is the wave that I think like may finally push them over. They get a phenomenal boss monster in this guy, the Creation King. He has like 3 really good effects. He like gets you a +1 from grave. He on summon is like Foolish Burrowing 3 cards. And he's a quick effect to like mass pop the field potentially. Like he's a legitimately good card. He helps them so much. Next up, Centurion. This one's kind of a result of like a couple things. Centurion's already like considered a higher level rogue deck, so it didn't really need much. But you add an extra tuner extender to the deck, which is something they definitely appreciated, because one of the ways you could kind of like annoy Centurion is you could focus your interactions on keep Primera off the field. If I keep Primera off the field, it can only be special summoned once per turn. So once they special it, it cannot be specialed again, and that can kind of put them in a pickle in terms of like maintaining or like getting enough tuners on field to actually do synchro plays. Now they actually get another tuner, so even if you do try to hard focus on the Primera, they can still just extend into this one, and this one has its own special summon as well to extend with. So I think it's a nice one-up for the deck, as well as Whitewoods. We already talked about Whitewoods, how they have synergy there. Maybe that's just the best way to play the deck going forward as well, so they could get better from that too. Next up, Dragons. I guess this is kind of just Dragon Link, although I'm not entirely sure the exact way people are going to go with this, but I seem to have underplayed this when these cards came out. I had a lot of people in the comments telling me like I'm totally underestimating these, especially just because of how open-ended Dragon Link is. But these cards are just a pretty good like fusion engine. They like jump on the field relatively easily, and then they just like say fusion summon. So they're like one of the bodies and the fusion spell for like pretty easy access to some decent fusion monsters. So yeah, I would not be surprised if we see these guys like actually become part of like Dragon Link. Not that I think Dragon Link's like out of this world, but I think just because of the crazy amount of tools they already have, plus Fiend Smith becoming a lot more popular in the format, makes Bistrels a little bit better, so that inherently may make Dragon Link a little more enticing. But yeah, these cards are not nothing, and since the deck's already, I think, decent, this actually could push it up a little higher. Gimmick Puppet, this is a scary one. A lot of people are really scared of this archetype. Like, I see some people scared of it, and I see some people, like, completely ignoring its existence, basically. I will not be ignoring its existence because it's really scary. This is basically a deck that can FTK. If they go first, they pretty decently, consistently can FTK you, which is terrifying. And also going second, Gimmick Puppets historically were known as a better going second deck than a going first deck. So they have tools to go second if need be, and going first they can just be really scary and FTK you. So I think it's at least like a higher level rogue deck. Maybe it'll even be tier 2. We'll see. It's also super low rarity, so this should be like a super cheap deck to build if you want to. So that may also make it see a little extra play, because some of these other decks and engines, especially the high tier stuff, Fiend Smiths and whatever, that's just a little expensive right now. And the last one from the high-level rogue category is Tenpai Dragon. They get 3 new cards here, technically. They get this guy, Genroku, who's really just their own Poplar, basically, as well as Poke Draco, a new normal summon that searches basically any fire dragon. So definitely has some solid synergy in the deck. Jesus, my cats are wrestling over there. Anyway, Poke Draco. So that card's not like a 3-of or anything, because the deck already has a good normal summon, but it's a card that, like, for extra consistency, sometimes you have like extra searches, and sometimes you're able to summon Pydora, so you may want a normal Poke in certain scenarios. He's probably a 1-of, maybe a 2-of in some lists for extra consistency. But yeah, the engine gets a little better. The trap card's not very good, but it's there. So after that, we move to the more mid-level rogue stuff. This is like, I'd call them rogue enough where like I wouldn't be totally shocked to see them top a regional or something, but I don't expect them to be like crazy YCS topping lists. First up, Madolche. They get 3 new cards here. 2 really nice extra deck cards. The trap is fine. You might play it at 1. The only thing I could have asked for from this was a little bit of extra deck engine help. Main deck engine help. The main deck engine is just kind of okay. But still, these extra deck cards are actually pretty useful for what the deck really needed. So that'd be cool. But anyway, that's solid. Next up, you have Valmonica. I historically have kind of poo-pooed on this archetype. I still think it's pretty poo-poo. I've really... Oh my god, you animals! Anyway. So yeah, Valmonica in here. I'm going to leave that in. I don't even care. They're turds. I don't really think Valmonica is very good. I never have. I've really never been shown otherwise, so... whatever. These cards might be nice. I think the Link 2's fine, and I think they also get a trap card in here, but for what the deck needed, for what it feels like the deck needs in terms of power, this is not it. So, whatever. They'll be fine. This card's interesting. So this is a level 2 Aqua Tuner. Basically, it's like low-key Paleozoic support. If you guys have followed like Joshua Schmidt or whatever in the small like subcategory of players who have really been messing around with that deck because they just love it. Awesome. I love that. That's so cool. Just playing like decks that nobody thought were that good and actually showing that they can be pretty good. This is a pretty interesting card because this card in hand or grave can just summon itself every time, anytime a monster is special summoned by a trap effect, which is basically all Paleozoics. So in the grind game, this is a pretty good card to just get in rotation because every time you summon a Paleozoic, this also just comes back. On top of that, during the opponent's battle phase, this card can quick effect, just either Synchro Summon or Exceed Summon. So if you're able to summon a Paleozoic in your opponent's battle phase while this card's engraved, you get to summon the Paleo, then you get to use this card to summon itself back, and now this is a quick effect to Exceed Summon into any rank 2 you really want to, which is pretty cool, honestly. So this card is not nothing. It's probably just a 1-of for the deck, but it's a 1-of that, like, get it in rotation and, like, cool. Voice's Voice. I threw this on here just because Voice's Voice is already, like, a decent deck, but this card really, I don't even think is playable for them, so we can just kind of move past it. Drytron's here as well. They have a couple of new cards here. I think the biggest card is definitely this guy, the new 2. He is a really powerful engine card for them. I still don't know if Drytron can really hold up. It's one of those old-style combo decks from a couple of years ago, and we also didn't have Bestials when this deck was good, and now so now this deck has to worry about Bestials and Shifter and stuff that this deck just really can't handle too well, but it is what it is. Their engine does get better, so we'll take it. Ragnarika gets a couple new cards. I don't think they're out of this world. This is a nice, like, main deck card that on your end phase lets you, like, draw a couple cards potentially as a part of your end board, which is cool. And then they get a Link 3, I think, that, like, pops back row. Not that great, but it's like it's maybe a 1-of utility card to have back row removal in the deck. And the last card we have here is for the Shining Sarcophagus archetype. I don't think it's that good. It does let you search any spell or trap that adds has Dark Magician in its name, but I don't know if that actually does that much. Maybe it's fine for, like, Dark Magician, and maybe it allows Shining Sarcophagus to be a small engine in like Dark Magician to allow them to kind of get access to certain things. But other than that, I don't think it's like crazy. I don't think it really helps Shining Sarcophagus much. I think it helps Dark Magician more, but it's still Dark Magician, so I don't think it's that good. So that's everything for the rogue stuff, which takes us to our final category, which is all of the generic stuff in the set. So there actually is some pretty high-end generic cards here in the set. It's pretty cool. First one here is a TCG exclusive called Zapper Shrimp. It's basically a new form of one of those quick synchro monsters. Quick, like that he can just quick synchro on the opponent's turn. On summon, he can send another card from your hand or field to the grave to pop or spell or trap. So it pops spell or trap on summon, and then it has a quick effect during the opponent's main phase of just Synchro Summon. And it's a tuner. It's level 2. Sure. It's just another one of those. It could just be one that comes up down the line. I don't have a specific use for it right now, but it's just one of those cards that, like, I would not be surprised if down the line we just have a new crazy Synchro strategy, and this card is just part of their end board. Just what they do. Silvera. So this is one of the White Forest cards. Actually a pretty nice card for them, but also completely generic, right? He takes any tuners and non-tuners to make. He's just an easy 6. On special summon, he just Book of Moons the entire board, your opponent's entire board, I should say, which is pretty strong. So either being able to quick effect make this on the opponent's turn to just book the whole board, or summon this into a board that doesn't really have link monsters to just like basically threaten, like, hey, if you don't negate me, I'm putting your whole board in check. Is pretty nice. This is a pretty interesting card generically for synchro decks going forward. It also gives all illusion and spellcaster synchros 500 attack and double piercing damage, which is not nothing, especially since this is already a spellcaster. So this is basically 2400 with double piercing is not nothing just by itself. So if you can get any other spellcaster or illusion synchros on the field, this card really can help you push for a lot of damage. But yeah. This card, I feel like this card is one of the most undersold cards of the set so far because everybody's excited about Charmy and Fiend Smith and stuff. But this card's kind of slipping through the cracks a little bit. A lot of like higher end players definitely know about this card, but yeah, it's really cool. On summon, it gets you any continuous trap card that summons itself as a monster. So there's a handful out there. I think Angel Statue as a Rune is probably the best one overall. There's another one in this set as well in the form of Silo Hat Trick, but I think this one kind of interacts pretty awkwardly, so I don't love it personally. It also has a bonus effect where if a card in the spell and trap zone is summoned to the monster zone, you can target a spell or trap card your opponent controls and destroy it. So it is like an MST combined with the fact that it searches an interruptive like trap monster on top of that. It kind of feels like a weird, like much less powerful like Verte Anaconda roll, which I think is pretty healthy overall as a card. I like the design of this card because what Verte was like, oh, my whole strat, I got hand trapped 3 times. You know, I got stopped so many times, but I still put 2 bodies on the field. You could take Verte into a DPE, which was going to be like a draw 2 next turn, plus he's popping every turn and coming back. It was like a little bit too strong. So this card's a little bit like that same role going first. Like everything else gets stopped, but you still have 2 bodies on the field. So you can just go into this and you're going to get an Azarune plus a Spell and Trap pop. And it can't be destroyed by battle. That's another thing. He's a illusion, so he has that same like illusion monster clause. Pretty cool card. I think this card will actually find itself into a lot of decks with 1 copy of like an angel statue as a Rune or Silhouette hat for like backup plans, basically. It's kind of cool. All right, moving on. Next card. I think this card's really interesting too. This is a card I haven't seen really hardly anybody talk about. It's called Spell Card Monster Reborn. This card is it's basically a quick play Monster Reborn with a couple of extra restrictions. It's not hard, or it is hard once per turn, unlike regular Monster Reborn, and it negates the monster it summons, and it cannot attack either. So you put some restrictions on this card, but the fact that it's a quick play is really interesting. I feel like it has a lot of potential utility. Like, one, we're talking about like a Fiend Smith format where any light fiend is basically combo, and so even going second or something, you could take a light fiend from your opponent's grave and just link it straight into your Requiem and just get off to the races with your own Fiend Smith engine, which is kind of cool. Otherwise, it's still a quick play, so it's also like Graveyard Interruption. It's not quite as good as Called by the Grave, but there are a lot of situations where Called by negating something doesn't even matter, because they're just trying to like reborn a monster, and you're just like, oh, I'll banish that so you don't get the body. But now you're not only stopping them from getting the body, but you're also taking the body for yourself. There's some cool things that this card definitely does. If your deck is the kind of deck where just like 1 simple body on the field really does help you extend, this is actually a pretty interesting card with a lot of extra bonus utility to it as well. So it's pretty cool. I think it's interesting. I'm definitely going to pick up a playset of this card and stash it for when I think it can come in. And then finally we get to the hand traps. These are some of the bigger cards in the set for sure. Dominus Purge. This one's getting a little bit undersold. I get it though, because you're not able to play it in quite a few decks. It's basically like a newer form of Ash. It can negate any card that adds a card from deck to hand, but it locks you out of like Dark, Fire, and Water monster effects for the rest of the turn. So it's like there's some pretty rough drawbacks there. I think it'll take a very specific type of deck to be able to mess around with this card, but I'm not exactly sure if there are any running around right now. Then the last card we're going to talk about here is Mulcharmy Perulia. This card was a lot more exciting a week ago, but then we got the new Mulcharmy revealed, and now everybody's just kind of like, oh, so this one is the much worse version of the new Mulcharmy. This card's still pretty decent for what it's worth, though. It's kind of like a Maxi-ish card where once you activate it, every time your opponent summons from hand, normal or special, you draw a card, which against most decks is going to be at least 2 draws, so it's a +1 in most scenarios. It can only really be used going second, though, so it's a side deck option or a main deck option for a deck like Tenpai Dragon. Overall, I don't think it's going to have crazy impact. The newer one certainly might and probably will, but this one's just still like fine. I think these are cool hand traps that are playable, the 2 new ones we have here, but they're not like out of this world about to warp the format. Every format's going to have these cards in them going forward. Nothing like that. Maybe next set we'll talk more about that, but for right now, I think these ones are just okay, and they're fine. Like, they're solid for what they are. But yeah, a lot of cool stuff. This is a really powerful set. Honestly, a little scared. You know, Konami already has confirmed us that in about a month and a half we're going to get a ban list after seeing how Infinite Forbidden actually impacts the format. Hopefully we see some heavy stuff on Snake Eye. Maybe we'll even see really early stuff for Yubel. Who knows? But yeah, we'll have to see. But this set is really crazy. Let me know in the comment section down below. Are there any cards I didn't cover in this video that I should have? As well as what are you most excited for from this set? What are you picking up? I'd love to hear what you guys are grabbing down below in the comments. Thank you so much, though. This is a pretty in-depth video. If you made it this far, subscribe to the channel, because I love making videos like this that kind of sum everything up for you guys in one somewhat tight-knit package. And I want to keep making it. But I'm out of here for today. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I will see you in the next video. Peace.